Welcome, everyone. Kasia kind of framed it nicely. This is our first session of 2020, and we are excited. I think we're going to start as we ended in 2019 with just great content and on a high note. Just kind of by way of review for those in the community, our community has grown exponentially. Just from 2019 to 2020, we've literally doubled the amount of people. So we're at 80 plus leaders representing 60 plus world-class companies and continue to grow. So that is a credit to the group, and we're excited to start the year. You know, they always say the old expression, you are the company you keep. We're in pretty good company right here with some great folks that are leading their organizations in various different capacities. Our topic today, and just to frame it out, and then we're going to get to what's so good about this community, is let the practitioners lead the conversation. So just to frame it, our topic today is the evolving role of partners. And when you think about how disruptive the subscription business model is on every facet of a company, you can think about engineering and how it's changed the way we architect software. You could think about finance and the fact that we need to recognize revenue differently in a subscription model with ratable revenue, or marketing, how the value propositions are changing, or sales, how the sales motion is changing. So it's literally impacting every function. So it stands to reason that we should put a critical eye towards partners. How do partners change, and the role of partners, and how do they evolve in a subscription business? And so that's really the heart of our topic today. To help lead us through that discussion, we've got members, which is so great about this community, that members are talking to members about real-life experience and insights. Christophe Bodin, 25 plus years of experience in software, and is the Chief Customer Officer at Anaplan. I'm so grateful for Christophe to help co-lead this session. And then we also have Roberto Sigona. Roberto is in charge of the entire global customer engagement process for Qlik software, is the Chief Customer Officer for Qlik, and will also be co-leading the session. So we've got some folks that are really in the throes of this issue, leading SaaS-based businesses, to have our commentary around. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to the experts and Christophe to begin.
Thanks, Chad. Great to be here again and discussing that topic about the role of partners and how it evolves in the subscription model. Because of course, as Chad mentioned, and Roberto is going to discuss about that too, it forces us to change about the way that we're thinking about relationship with partners, and what does it change in terms of the relationship and the way that we need to conduct business together with business partners. So if you can move to the next slide, Kasia, please. The intent of this slide is kind of trying to turn the conversation from inside out to outside in. What I mean by that is, we all know the layer model, which is the perspective of the vendor on how we look into the relationship with our prospects and customers, and how we land, adopt, expand, renew. But I think here it's really looking through the customer perspective and how the partners align with that, right? So the equivalent of land is plan from a customer standpoint, looking at how they going to resolve their business issue together with the partner, and then we go into implement, which is the equivalent of adopt, monitor, being the equivalent of expand. Why is this important is I think there's a natural gravitas for us being the customer, the partners, and the vendor around the adopt and implement, right? This is where there's a lot of energy. The partner wants to jump in and get the project going. The customer wants to see the value. This is where the race on time to value starts. And we as a vendor, of course, once we landed, we wanted the things to get adopted, because we all know in the subscription model, this is key to future success. So there's a lot of energy and gravitas around adopt and implement, but it's only one of the four, right? So I think where it's changing the way that we need to think about the partner relationships is how actually through the continuum of layer and plan, implement, monitor, and renew here, how we continue the relationship with the partners all along because they're not all created equal in terms of the importance of the various parties and partners versus customers versus vendors. So for me, where things started to change is, as opposed to simply look at what a project means and how to implement technology, it's how do we make sure that the partners are actually in the loop and connected with us all across the layer model. That was a big aha moment for me to suddenly think about, okay, it's not about one thing, it's about that relationship, that continuous relationship. This is where the difference is coming in from a subscription standpoint. So Roberto, I think that you're going to jump into more details around that.
Absolutely. So if you go to the next slide. So again, thank you for having me today. Clearly, nobody really has all the answers on this topic. This is always a lot of healthy debates around it, but certainly an observation that I had earlier on, and I have more and more every day, is there is a change of the role of the partner. The cloud and subscription deal size tends to be a little smaller. We obviously, as Christophe mentioned, the renewal starts when you attach now. So you're always selling, you're always trying to renew. It's a continuous motion. And the role of the partner, the economics for a partner has changed dramatically. Being just a reseller, we come from a world where we're trying to just get more feet on the streets and just cover more territory. So we went off and found people who could sell for us and provide the bank service for us as well, right? The financing in their own market and so on and so forth. Nowadays, we see those margin eroding. This is a study, it's a little dated. There was Microsoft at the beginning of the cloud journey, but this is very telling about how in the days of desktop, Microsoft observed that their partner were making 20 cents for each dollar of software they were selling. And in cloud, that paradigm has shifted. For each dollar of software now, you have to make $2 or $3 of services to survive. It's not just that you're becoming a lot more profitable. You are, if you do this, but it also shows that if you're only in the resale business, well, your margin is very thin. So unless you're really like a mass distributor, you're gonna struggle. So you have to go up the value chain. You have to, the first evolution is to go from simply reselling. A lot of the resellers were doing first line support as well, but they really have to now just help the customers go live, implement, train the end users, and then started evolving towards consulting and more advanced services, all the way up to really managed services where margins go higher because you blend support with consulting and you have a bigger say. And ultimately, if you have your own IP on top of whatever software you resell as a reseller, obviously your margin now just get way, way higher. So again, a big shift in this in the economics of partners, which for us, the software providers mean as well. I saw that my dear friend Ray Savona from Autodesk is on the call. He knows this a lot more than I do, actually. How, for example, in a company like Autodesk, you see, when I was there, at least there was a consolidation of partners, the small partners sort of like dying and new ones coming to the market. There is this emergence of a new generation of partners, new generation of people coming from a service angle, mini SIs, so to speak, almost. People who come and just want to talk about the end-to-end solution as opposed to just I'm here to move boxes. In cloud, there's no box to move anymore. There's no logistics that's not part of the value anymore, for sure. If you go next slide. So I mentioned this. So there is a need to change how we pay partners. So we used to give them a percentage of whatever business they bring in. Now, how do you in this land adopt, expand, and renew? How do you drive the right behavior with a partner now? So yes, bringing new logos is still part of the game. You have to bring new logos. So you want to pay people for bringing new people, but the cost of selling and the margin being lower on software sales, it takes more time to just for this deal to become profitable. So you want to make sure not only that your partners now are incentivized to bring new people, but you need to really pay them when the software is getting used. So adoption, paying for performance is not just selling now. The motion is the motion of adoption. Do they have expansion? So obviously, the faster the expansion comes, and the bigger the renewal, the net retention of those partners are sort of the new KPIs you can look at for a partner to judge the performance now. So how fast do they get velocity of the pipeline, so to speak, from landing to software being in use, and how fast do they get to an expand, and how good is the renewal performance? So the new parameters you have to put now in the balance as you think about your ecosystem.
Hey, Roberto, sorry to put you on the spot here. How do you incentivize partners? And maybe we can open up to the rest of the crowd to kind of having a conversation on the various ways that we incentivize partners.
That's a great point, Christophe. I think I'm dying to hear how you do it. So for me today, the partner program, my company is in year 1.5 of a 4-year subscription transition. So we still have a bit of the old and the new model, but on the new model now, it's led a lot more by my organization, and we're paying people more for SIs as SIs now. So the partner program in my company today is still a bit the old days, but I incentivize them more for the services by just passing the service through for them. That's the way I kind of juice their revenue, so to speak, where I might be the one landing the deal on services, but I pass it on to them to make sure they have something to do and something highly profitable to deliver, to make sure the economics they're going through right now is still good. The new partners we bring in, who are more like service houses, obviously we are measuring and making sure they get used to this metric of are your customers live after 3 or 6 months? So that's the new metric we're introducing to them. It's too new to hold them accountable for it. We're measuring it right now so that they become familiar with it. And when they become familiar enough with it, we can just make this a stick as opposed to just a nice to have. So that's where I am with my company. It's really the beginning of the motion, so to speak. Anyone on the call wants to share how you do it?
How about Ray? I know, Ray, to put you on the spot a little bit, but Roberto did mention you. How do you look at it from the Autodesk standpoint?
Yeah, no problem. So just to reiterate something Roberto said, obviously, with a vendor, we've got, 3, 4, 8 competitors. With a reseller or a partner, they've got hundreds and sometimes thousands of competitors. And so you got to be careful that the motion is not land and go find the next land, because somebody else is going to swoop in with a lower price on the adopt and renew motions. So what we've done is we've taken some of the margin we used to pay on land, and we're tying it to activities that we think are good representations of adoption. Now, it's hard because everything's a proxy for utilization or adoption or customer satisfaction. But we're looking for things like, in the first 90 days, are they up and running? Are they logged into their software? We look for the next 6 months. We send out a survey. It's called a relationship survey at the end of the term, and we're looking for a positive NPS on that. We're really loose on how strict we are with the criteria right now, because there's systems and change management that we're working through. But we do make a payment after 90 or 180 days to the partner that sold it, based on the customer's functions, regardless of who they renew with. And so that's been a real big departure from us, because we really looked at paying people on land and on renew. And now what we're saying is, if you land and the customer does these, particular outcomes, we'll pay you regardless if that customer chooses to go to a different partner or go direct. So we're experimenting with it. We've been doing this for about 2 years now, and I'd say that the results are interesting.
It's interesting you said this, Ray, because the things you mentioned, obviously, you and I were doing this together. We started, so it's good to see where we were. It's important to note that Ray and I, we used to work together, and we've been experimenting this for quite a while. 6, 7 years ago, we introduced even paying when they were doing just support to partners. We introduced this thing about early on. we're going to pay you based on your CSAT with your customers. So, you know, we had a tier model on the partners, and you could not be the top tier, i.e. the top margin, unless you were in the top 25 percentile in satisfaction score, for example. So there was a mutiny with the partners when we did this, but it did drive the right behavior. Ultimately, people were hiring support people. It becomes a marketplace when you have thousands of competitors as races. It's a marketplace. Your reputation is all you've got. Sometimes. Anyone else?
And it's really, just to recap that, and I'd love to open it up to others. So that was kind of interesting, Ray's perspective of kind of the land dollars traditionally given are now kind of evolving to being shared on more of a adoption KPIs set of behaviors. So, which speaks to this graphic. How about David Sakamoto, my friend, or Eric Ranta at Google? Guys, what are your thoughts on the partner model as it works in your business? I see Eric coming off mute.
Yeah, I was going to let David go first, but I can jump in if you'd like.
Yeah, please.
Yes. So we're heavily dependent upon a partner model, not only for channel sales, but also for helping us with our larger implementation. So we've got a very diverse partner model. In terms of actually espousing value out to them, we're in the very early stages of that. It's something we've got a lot of ambition about, and this couldn't be more timely for helping us frame our thinking. Our goal is to have them follow our patterns. Our partners are really good solution sellers. They build products or they enhance our products and services, and then build things around common use cases on their own. And our goal is to make sure that they've got the value ingredient included in that dialogue. And maybe they wouldn't necessarily lead with value, but they'd have a strong value component in their solution selling exercises.
Wonderful. And for those on the call, Eric leads the value initiative within Google Cloud, so a very important initiative for the entire company. And maybe, David, I'd love you to maybe jump in as well if you can. David Sakamoto.
He's in a really good area.
Oh, I'm hearing he's in an area maybe not conducive. So I'll turn it back to Christophe and Roberto.
Hey, Chad.
Yes.
This is Jaime. I might jump in.
Please, Jaime.
So, hi, everybody. Jaime Qlik with Bain. I joined the community recently, so thanks for having me. I've been working for the last year with a multi-billion-dollar reseller, and you know, just interestingly, snapshot right now, we're working on renewals with them, and this is a hard migration for them to make. You know, the skilling isn't right. You know, and it's the whole value chain. The sellers don't have the skilling right. The sales support doesn't have the skilling right. Cloud adoption services are like not easy for them to get their heads around. And then even just the ticky-tacky stuff, like getting the renewal data feed from one OEM versus another, and trying to get the right, you know, T-6 months, T-4 months, T-3 months, and get that consistently top of mind. You know, so the patterns we're seeing is actually they've done what we would all do, which is in the face of overwhelming complexity, try to grab the biggest things they can get hold of and make sure those get landed. But there's a lot of opportunity for the mechanics of this to work better, I think, between the OEM community and the partner community. And it's all well intentioned. I thought the solution selling point's right on, which is, I think everyone's sort of gotten religion that they need to be solution sellers and bring multiple components to the solution, but it creates a spaghetti code on the back end in terms of how do you get all those contracts coterminous and how do you get the incentives lined up and things like that. So it's hard out there. I think that's what I'm trying to say.
I was wondering also, Chad is in the group here. When we were doing the prep call, I was sharing that one of the things that always puzzled me, I haven't looked very recently about how they're doing it, but Cisco was trying to do a model that is a lot more involved. They were really trying to run a full-blown franchise. Okay, So like, as opposed to what Ray is saying, where you're trying to just give them some metrics, but you kind of like it's kind of lose. Those guys were really trying to have like full-blown certification and so on and so forth. So I was wondering if someone has a different approach, a little bit more involved like that, a bit more prescriptive with the.
Yeah, this is David Sakamoto. Actually, was at Cisco and I led that for a couple of years before I moved to GitLab. So I had just. So we work with we primarily focus on the large partners because those were the most invested with developing a real adoption practice. I had about a little over 20 people that were solely focused on partner enablement for customer success. And the way we structured it, so we partly addressed it through that engagement. So we had partner managers associated with each partner, helping them to enable them, but also help them along the way and do audits on success plans and those kind of things. But really, it was a deep investment to help transform the Cisco partner ecosystem to a subscription business. So it was a big motion. It was a huge portion of the couple of years that I was there. And the way we structured it, we had we provided incentive. Only the key thing, incentives, right? You provide incentives on land. We had incentives on signature of a success plan that identified specific deliverables as part of the engagement. We had incentives for expansion that took place, and we had special discounts for renewal to give the incumbent a better position to do the renew versus, I think as Ray had mentioned, another partner coming in, sweeping in and getting the renewal. So we wanted to make sure if they made that investment, we wanted to make sure that we protected them to be able to maintain that customer relationship. In parallel, I did not have the services. We had a whole services enablement team that would do, service outsourcing and professional services, managed services. I was primarily focused on the customer success piece. So it sounds all great. It was definitely a huge investment. I spent a lot of time going around to our partners, evangelizing customer success, working with a lot of the big ones and helping them with the strategy of their practice. It was tough, right? I think Ray had mentioned Cisco telemetry was really mixed. So even our ability to have insight on adoption was super mixed. Sometimes it was just literally we had to kind of monitor the engagement of those partners. In some areas we did have good telemetry. We ran into, I think Ray also mentioned there's a big tools investment. So we were really working that. There's a bunch of data privacy things you need to think about in terms of sharing. Number one, getting telemetry data from your customers first, and then also sharing it with partners. That was a big thing in terms of providing the telemetry at the foundation. So you actually truly have insight to adoption versus engagement. The second thing was just getting partners engaged. This is not a motion. They're used to kind of land and leave, which rather than land, adopt, expand, renew, it's a land and leave motion. So there's a transformation that they need to drive on their behalf on the partner side to transition to a subscription, as many did, as Autodesk did. There's a ton of tooling and portals and investment around. We had a digital journey, so we allowed them to kind of customize that. So it was, I was probably 2 years in, and they probably have at least, it's going to be a long journey. I would say they probably have at least a couple more years to get to a point where you'd say, yeah, we have insight to what's going on. Because there was a lot of investment put in and a lot of, there was a lot of black boxes, not really knowing what's going on and doing our best to provide metrics for engagement. So happy to answer any questions.
Hey,
hopefully that was helpful.
David, it's Ray from Autodesk. Interesting because everything you talked about, gathering the data from the customers, giving it to the partners, all those things are the same issues. But one thing it sounds like you may have your hands around or had your hands around was protecting the investment on the renewal. Can you expand on that?
I don't remember the exact incentives off the top of my head, but there was an extra, and I don't remember, I think we provided extra discount on the renewal, and we provided extra incentives. We had a higher incentive for expansions that took place with that existing customers. So we had to kind of get specific, because especially in big customers, as you know, they may have multiple partners. So we had to be very specific with if you sold the expansion against this deployment. And we provide, I don't remember the exact points, Ray, if I can dig it up. And I'd be happy to connect you or anybody else to someone who's still there. I'm sure they'd be happy to talk with you. But we provided extra points on the expansion. We provided, so we provided, I think it was a fixed price on the success plan renewal based on the size of the contract. And that one, I can't remember, it's kind of, you have to think of like whether it flows. I think that one flew to the rep. Some of the other compensation actually flew to the partner itself. And we had extra incentive on expansion, and we had a discount on the renewal. Okay. We had extra discount points.
Well, what do you do right now? I remember the deal registration days, but where are you at nowadays, Ray?
We're trying to do something similar to what David's describing. Is we've got a back end incentive on the renewal that's only paid if you are basically the invested partner, the reseller of record. And that is attempting to protect that partner on their adoption activities and make sure that it's just not a race to the bottom on the renewal from a pricing perspective.
That's right. And again, I think though, we're talking in a volume business that is all true. Do you guys agree though that in a more enterprise type relationship, if as Christophe highlighted, if you all along from the landing all the way up to the renew, you're the one who implemented, you're the one who has the relationship, the likelihood that someone can swoop in is remote. On the other hand, that's the other aspect of this. At least in my experience, for the partners who are very invested in the whole plan, implement, monitor, and optimize motion with their customers day in and day out, there is less of a risk of someone coming in. The 10% discount on renewal might not be that appealing to anyone.
Yeah, I think the other thing to consider there, and one of the motions that I was focusing on is the transformation of kind of philosophy on selling, because one thing that's not a hard incentive, but it is really communicating. If you stay engaged, you also, because most of these partners make their money on services, not necessarily on product. Mm-hmm. It depends on the product, if their service is friendly type of products or necessary. But I think there was also a piece where we partnered with the service to make sure that they had service offerings that they could offer as part of that ongoing engagement. So they should, and we definitely found partners that would find expansion sooner on even other products because they were engaged, or additional service offerings that they're able to position as part of that continuous engagement versus more like their traditional account management that you would typically see in that sort of relationship.
Yeah, that's interesting. Back to what you just said, as well as what Roberto said. We're thinking, we haven't done it yet, but we're thinking of including incentive on ARR. So really on how much growth of the ARR is coming through partners versus only incentivizing them on ACV or passing through services dollars or marketing stuff, but incentivizing them on how much additional incremental annualized revenue is generated by the customers that the partners is overseeing. But I think, Ray, you said it better. When you do that kind of stuff, I'm joining you into you seeing interesting behavior. You use the word interesting, very interesting behavior. So careful what we're wishing for here. There's a lot of things that we're discovering as we walk into those new territories.
Yeah, and that's, I just want to also kind of emphasize, the way I'm describing it is the 10,000-foot level. As you push down, there were lots of holes and gaps and unknowns that we had. So it was very, very far from perfect. I think at the 10,000-foot level, it sounds great, but as you really push in the details, there was tons of details that need to be worked out that weren't, and a lot of guesswork and a lot of interpolation of results based on engagement. So it is a journey. It did take a pretty healthy investment in both people, incentive programs, tools, and infrastructure. So I wouldn't suggest it for the lighthearted because it is a pretty significant investment that needs to be considered as a corporate strategy.
Yeah, this is what I remember, David. Like, remember following very closely the Cisco model. I was still Autodesk back then, and I felt like we could never afford this. I was way too involved. I mean, again, it just depends how much you're getting out of it, right? So it's everything is relative. But certainly, what my experience now is, and I want to talk more that as part of the next piece of the conversation is, I think one answer for all your customer segments is kind of unlikely. Is that fair? I mean, what you do for your top and your enterprise, your biggest partner with your biggest customer is one thing, and what you do for your volume business maybe is not the same, because
Yeah.
one thing works one way and doesn't work the other way.
Yeah, the one-to-many, I think it is the hardest portion, right? We have a lot of small customers and small dollars, so we still need to do some adopt, expand, renew through those partners, but it's too costly and automation, right?
The way that we did that is, I mean, the one-to-many, I think most take a digital approach, or at least a hybrid digital approach. And what we did there is we extended that digital journey to partners. We had some tooling that would allow them to customize and kind of put their brand on the emails and some of those. So that was part of the infrastructure investment to provide that capability to partners. That's what Cisco did.
Interesting.
Very cool. Anybody else wants to chime in on this topic? Otherwise, we can move on. We already started to talk about the roles and responsibilities between partners and us, but that's sort of like the next topic. But maybe we should just go there to see, like, fuel the conversation a bit further around the roles. If you move the next slide, Kasia, I think that is the next piece of it, right? I mean, David, you mentioned this a lot. I think that what's our role as the provider and the role of the partner? Certainly, and I think that this is conflict. This is prone to conflict. This is often competition, and the only way you can become better is increasing the transparency between being true partners and having a very hard-coded engagement model. So what you described, David, is investment in tool, in data sharing, making sure that if I'm measuring telemetry on the software usage, I should share that with the partner, otherwise they can't drive adoption. And if they go implementation on site, they should share with me, otherwise I don't know what's going on. So there is like this idea about the roles changing. But my opinion, the reason why we put this slide here, at least to start the conversation, the point of view to get you guys going was more that there is a need to redefine what does the mothership own versus the partner owns in the field. And the simplest model I have to a philosophical model is everything that is closely tied to the product. And if it's a cloud, obviously you're hosting the product yourself. Obviously the company needs to own like telemetry, like what the prescriptive journey to adoption or success should look like. We should know about this because we are the software provider. And in the other hand, the role of the partner, we talked about the fact that providing the services and even helping the customer is how they make money. But this is also, they are the great advantage of doing that because they're present in the field where it's harder for us as a provider to be. We can't be maybe except at our named account, our top account, which we all do direct. So I think there is this engagement where what are you better equipped to do, Mr. Partner, versus what I'm better equipped to do, and what's the new handshake between how we are clear about what we do. At Autodesk back then, a couple of years ago, right before I left, and I've done the same in my current company, the first move I did in my current company is based on customer segments, for example, is decided that below a certain level of a customer, my consulting team will not provide any services. So at least you're telling the partner, this is yours. Right, so as opposed to we competing, we bidding on it on the same deals with the same customers. So clear roles and division of responsibilities is important. Support first response on a cloud, the provider has to do because you own the cloud. But if it's a support request about how to use the product to a specific use case, the partner is better equipped to do it. So again, this is sort of like the handshake I try to have with partner. Is looking at each other in the eyes. What are you better equipped to do versus what I'm better equipped to do? Any thoughts about that, anyone?
Christophe, maybe how does Anaplan look at that division of what we do versus what the partner does?
Yeah, that's a great question, Chad, because that's something that we really not struggling, but they're really thinking deep about because we're going into pushing, well, not pushing is not the right word, but in really having the partner owning the relationship, especially for the big implementation and the big SI where we're part of, well, our technology and what we bring into the table is used as a bigger transformation. And how do we learn to actually stay in the back of the conversation and help the partner being successful as part of a bigger transformation, bigger project. And actually, I mean, I'm kind of 2 slides ahead here, but it's the right time to jump in there, which is who's owning my customer? Who's owning the customer success, right? And they're difficult, yeah, you just right into that slide, cool. Who's owning then my customer success? And even when I say that, you can see that I'm struggling because, oh, well, that's my customer, that's not their customer. Well, hang on a minute. Actually, they're much more my partner's customers than they are my customers now. And how you build that new relationship, new partnership is something that we're getting into, but it feels really uncomfortable. And I think that the subscription economy and all the SaaS thing is actually not making it easier, right? Because if I remember back in the days where, you know, I was selling hardware or on-prem software, you give that to a partner and say, hey, you take care of it. That's fine. It's got the asset and is taking care of it. You have all the question about renewal and who's owning renewal, all the things that we talked early. But in the subscription economy and the SaaS platform, it's still with you. You can still see what the customer is doing. You can still, and you have now to take all this data and all the utilization and what the customer is doing and actually pass it to the partner for him or her to do something with it. And I think we all, or at least we are, at Anaplan, slightly struggling with that because there's that I think perceived, and wrongly so, this is ours and it belongs to us. No, actually, it belongs to the customer. So it doesn't matter if it's us as a vendor or the partner that is taking ownership of his relationship and the customer success altogether. But even when I say it, it hurts. It's like, well, am I ready to give that responsibility?
Right.
Because at the end of the day, those customers are my customers and they're going to be responsible for my success moving forward. So am I comfortable giving that to the partner? And I think you said in the introduction that, yeah, I have 25. I think that now it's counting at 30 plus years of experience. I think so making me younger, Chad, but we coming from the world of, we used to call that channel, right? All of us, most of us,
Right.
used to call that channel and the indirect sales, right? And it's not that anymore. It's not a channel. It's a true partnership relationship. And I think that overall as an industry, what does this mean to us is the key struggle, essentially around that very question, which is who should own customer success? And it makes us slightly uncomfortable, although I think, especially in the enterprise sector, we know that's the right thing to do because we can be the specialist and the know-it-all on all business processes on all customers. It simply doesn't work. It simply doesn't scale. Even people like Cisco didn't achieve that. So you have to give it to the specialist, i.e. the partner who knows what he or she's doing here and letting go with the customer success. I don't know what you all think about that, but to me, that's where we're struggling.
I will share what we're seeing as HP. So I'm seeing, talking to partners, 2 kind of scenarios of partners. Ones that, okay, would like you to do everything because we don't want to either bother. We're still in the landing and leaving type of scenario. And there's good and bad because you can drive adoption, but you cannot drive expansion or renew because of partner conflict. And then we have the other ones that they would like to do. And then the second piece, you have 2 type of partners. The ones that's the old ones that push boxes all the life. And so the first thing they ask you is how much you're going to pay me so I do it for you. like the old break and fix. And I have the more like emerging partners that's in the new economy about as a service. They're different. How much data can you share with me? And whatever kind of education you can share. And we're piloting one in Latin America, in if I'm not wrong, it's in Chile, that this guy, where we're training them in customer success and so on. And they really don't care about how much money we're going to pay them, because they see they're going to grow more their business if they get the tools and the processes that we can provide to them. So it's very infancy in terms of where we are. We have just a couple trials we're doing for the last year, but I've seen those 3 buckets, and I think I would like to hear how you guys are seeing those on, especially on that bull market that's the partner ecosystem.
This is Paul Reed. Can you guys hear me as well?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
I'm from HP as well. And let me chime in. You asked, one of the best practices I've seen in this space that covers not just this, but all the services, because there's constantly a conflict between what we should sell and others. We started a process a little over a year and a half ago, and we called it a synergy workshop. And it's fairly detailed, but think of it as designing or developing swim lanes, right? And doing basically a services bake-off, right? Where there's proof points in terms of who should be delivering this part of the engagement. Now, admittedly, we need to now craft it more within the layer model, because today it was just more, quite frankly, focused more around the land and a little bit of the renewal. So, that's, I think, one of the next steps or things we'll do, but partners are asking for that transformation. We found that this is a good one because it helps to identify, gaps, and then we can talk jointly about how we bridge those gaps as well.
So many of you, in that sense, what's the balance of just, for example, the customer success manager who's sort of like the quarterback of the relationship? How many of you just have a mixed model where you have your partners having some, you have some, and how do you decide who runs primary? Any opinions? At Anaplan, Christophe, do you have all the CSMs, or which account do you cover, Christophe, and which one?
So I'm covering everything except the bottom and the top, and the very top. So and it's easier on the bottom than it is on the top. I think it was Juliandro saying that I know Roberto, you said it too. That okay, fine. Well, everything that is under certain thing, I'm not touching. Fine. I think it's almost an easy thing, because we all not think about how can we leverage the one to very, very many conversation from a CSM standpoint. So it's almost easier to drop it with the partner community and their closer and different languages. That's another conversation here. But we also doing that in the very top, where it's like, okay, I don't have a CSM on a few accounts. And instead, what I have, and I'm interested to hear if other people have that, I have PSM, and the P stands obviously for partner. So I have a small team. It's about less than 20 people worldwide. They're partner success managers, and as opposed to help directly the customer, they help the partner being successful. They have different metrics, different way of being paid than the CSM. But they're the partner success manager, as opposed to be responsible of the success of customers. They're responsible of the success of the partners and achieving their customer success through enabling them, through answering a specific question, or being responsible for escalation when needs be. But essentially, their function for 75% of their time is enabling the partner, making sure that they can really deliver good PS and CS services. That's something relatively new. We're doing that for about a year and a half now, where we have that new emerging type of people called PSM versus CSM, and that's specifically for the top of the pyramid in order for us to gain scale. So curious to understand if there's other people with partner success manager. They're not a partner account manager. They're not incented on ACVs or how much new business. They're specifically incented on, for instance, how many, what we call them model builders, think about developers, or how many system administrators the customer have, and how many of them are certified on different level and all that kind of good stuff. So am I the only one, or there's other people doing that out there?
So yeah, we're piloting some of that, Christophe, on HP in a very small scale right now, with on trying to focus as well in adoption and escalations for.
What's
for some of
interesting
those
about what you
partners.
said, Christophe, is the model, the pyramid is the most opposed to mine. Mine is a free tier where there's a series of customers. They're not always the biggest one, but the ones who really want to have a relationship. They're typically large, but size is not the only factor. They want a partnership, so we go direct at the top.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a huge category in the middle where it's really partner-led, and we don't have a partner's CSM, so to speak. What we have is a bunch of people also who enable and help those partners. We don't have a specific role for it. And then we take it back at the bottom, because a digital piece, we better equip to do it again. So, and that's all. I have created a new role there, where I call this inside CSM, because they're not assigned to accounts, so to speak, but are based on specific health parameters. And as Ray said, it's more black voodoo sometimes than science to understand in that high volume what's going on. But certainly it's a bit more of a reactive role, where if you have signs, one other thing that Ray does and I do as well is, if I don't have all the metrics, 6 months before renewal, I call every single customer and I get a pulse. How you doing? And if they're not doing good, I assign an inside CSM. So at least I have 6 months to try to do something about it. Okay, and hopefully they don't stay assigned too long. Otherwise, I'm not getting anything done. So that's this model. But we're all trying to find different favors at different segments. So to speak.
And how are funding that, Roberto? Is that like because I don't see like much revenue generation for those, right? So you're just sinking the cost, or?
Yeah, so at the top, there's always like this 50-50 split about monetizing CSM versus not. I'm a huge fan of monetizing. I sell packages that include all the consulting, the support, and the CSM at the top, small, medium, and large based on the size of customers. At the bottom, I fund those people out of support funding.
Okay.
So this is really like your cost of revenue, your cost of
goods sales. Okay.
Yeah.
Even for the pilot portion, you also consider as part of that.
I was going to chime in. I had PSMs at Cisco. The core was, we compensated them on a couple different things. A little bit on engagement, because our telemetry was so inconsistent, and mostly leaning towards the no telemetry on most products. We couldn't unfortunately do that, because that would make it preferred. But we incentivized them on expansion, so kind of like a success qualified lead that came out of that engagement with partners. We also incentivize them on onboarding partners. So we have a set of workshops and things we do to onboard a partner, because really from a maturity perspective, we're building up the partner ecosystem that could do adoption. And a very specific one, it wasn't great, but it was a measure of like, are they investing? So we actually had goals of the number of CSMs partners would hire. And it was a little bit of trust system, but we said it had to be a whole, of 75% more of their time focused on adoption. So they could just put in somebody, we found like a VP that was the CSM. So it wasn't perfect, but from a maturity perspective, we're just trying to get the motion going, getting partners to, probably the bigger thing is just transforming their business model to subscription, getting them to invest in the process of getting enabled and getting people certified, and hiring dedicated CSMs. And then on the kind of the ROI perspective, it was on success qualified opportunities.
Ray, you were saying something too?
Yeah, I was just gonna, on the funding. So as Roberto said, we cover kind of the top end and the bottom end. The top end is it's a cost of goods sold. It's part of the program, and there's dedicated resources, both from a customer success perspective as well as support perspective. On the bottom end, what we do is we look for those customers that are at risk, and we apply reactive customer success specialists to that. We fund that through cost of sales, right? Because it doesn't qualify as a cost of good. But we've been able to justify it because we have about a 10% better renewal rate when a customer success specialist engages. So we decided to go ahead and bite the bullet there. You know, in a perfect world, we'd know when partners sort of raise their hand and say that they're going to do it and they're going to do a good job. And if they're not, we could get in there. Unfortunately, with partners, they're not all created equally. And so you got to kind of figure out who's doing a good job and who's not, because some of the partners do a phenomenal job, have very high renewal rates. It's just that sorting out sort of, who is that partner doing a great job and who's not, and then how do you provide a backstop for those partners that aren't doing a great job?
That's great.
Guys, what a great conversation. We're just kind of at the top of the hour, and I wanted to do a little bit of a recap. I love the dialogue today. If you think about it, just in kind of summary, we've heard from Anaplan, Qlik, David from his Cisco days and now at GitLab. We heard from Jaime at Bain and Google's initiative, Autodesk and Ray, Leandro at HP. Just no surprise that this topic has brought a lot of fertile conversation to the members, and we'll continue the dialogue and iterate on more topics with you. But I love the fact that we had such a diversity of people chiming in. Probably the one thing I wanted to do, and then formally thank our hosts today, Christophe and Roberto, is I want to do a little bit of kind of logistics with you on some things that are coming up so that you're mindful of it. And again, this is all recorded, so this entire conversation will be brought out back to you in both a recap form and in its full version. But one thing each of the members have at the ecosystem is access to the member platform. And so I just thought it was interesting when David talked about the Cisco days and having a platform or investment in ways to scale it. Know that each of you has access into an environment where we could be working with the partner in a collaborative environment to, in this first kind of quadrant view, look at what the customer priorities are and be able to kind of memorialize those and capture them. And then if we move kind of from left to right, be able to build a joint roadmap on the implementation and the milestones around success and what that looks like. And again, having this kind of as an enablement platform with the partner so that they're guided in the way they're having the customer success discussions, but having from the provider standpoint full oversight. So kind of a joint road mapping capability. And then bottom left quadrant, being able to look at the leading and lagging indicators. Are we at plan, exceeding plan, behind plan, around certain KPIs that are jointly defined? And then finally, this concept of, innovation. Can we constantly have an ability to show new things that we're doing together to earn the right to grow? If we look at Christophe's point about looking at partners and maybe the ARR and growth, there should be some motion there around a potential. So this is something I just wanted to do in very quick order. Anybody's interested in diving deeper in how they can pilot this, use this, experiment with this, feel free to reach out to Kasha at the end, and we'll make sure that that's available for each of you as a way to maybe scale some of the discussions that we're having. And then finally, I wanted to just touch upon a couple big events coming up. One is a seminar next week with Gainsight, who's a member of the advisory, talking about how their platform now has what you just saw embedded in it, kind of an ecosystems value tracking component. And if anybody wants to have access to that webinar, we'll do all the heavy lifting and register you when appropriate. So again, just feel free to let Kasha know, and we'll get you signed up for that. That's March the 5th coming up. And then just a little bit of a sneak peek into great session today. Christophe and Roberto, can't thank you both enough for doing what the community wants, which is having leaders talk to other leaders about the reality. And sometimes it's the messy middle. It doesn't always have to be perfect. And so we have issues that we talk through. And so today's session, terrific and grateful. We have our next one lined up is 2 chief revenue officers of leading SaaS companies, Steve Fitz and Brett Shirk, are going to be talking about how they build pipeline. You know, how are they in this very tough economic environment building a recurring pipeline and prosecuting that pipeline in a way that matters and helps them make the number. And then we have fellow member Callan Carpenter, who also, there's an Autodesk theme here. Callan was at Autodesk and now is CRO at EagleView. He'll be talking about kind of some of the sales transformation that he's gone through in moving from a feature function sales orientation to a true outcome driven, and that's scheduled in April. So that's a little bit into the calendar, and obviously we'll make sure that you guys have access to that. And I'll leave with this one parting thought, which is, like Christophe and Roberto, those that have been part of this conversation that would like to have energy around a particular topic that they'd like to share, we're always on the hunt for making sure we're putting forth meaningful content for you and that it's all peer-driven and practitioner-led. So I've mentioned Kasha a lot today. So Kasha will also be that point of contact for anybody that has an idea or would like to look at sharing with the community some issues that they're facing. And I'll probably just underscore that point. We don't always want the rainbow and butterflies. What we love about this community is getting into the messy middle of real, interesting, emerging topics that don't easily sort themselves out, because that's the power of bringing this kind of collective wisdom. So feel your topics don't have to be perfect case studies. In fact, we'd opt for them not to be, but more emerging where everybody can learn from them. With that, I'm going to wish everyone a great day. Thank again our co-hosts, and again, make sure we'll have all of this for you in feedback and recap videos. Thanks all.